Good morning, friends, and welcome to Prairie Acres Farm. I know it has been a little while since I have made a video, but this is a very busy time of year for us. We have a lot of markets going on, especially in the fall, leading into Christmas. And then, of course, when you're dealing with the public, you end up catching everything that is going around. And right now in our area, we have a very nasty little bug going around, and so I've been dealing with that. But today, we are going to be making Brie cheese. So there are two different types of Brie that you can make. You can make the regular kind, or you can make the triple cream Brie. And both of these are very creamy cheeses, especially when they are fully aged, which is generally 8 weeks. So before the Christmas holidays, you want to be able to get this done now. That way it's fully cured by the time Christmas comes up. So if you're doing a charcuterie board or you're having gas and you want a very beautiful cheese, then you need to get started on that now. So with that being said, today we are going to be making a triple cream Brie. Now, the first directions that I'm going to give you is this is going to be if you don't have access to raw milk. As you guys know, I have my own Jersey cow or cows, and they give us beautiful milk and cream. And so if you don't have access to that, you can definitely use store-bought whole milk that you get from Walmart, Berkshire Brothers, wherever. So the directions for that is for every 2.5 gallons of milk that you use, and this is going to be for a triple cream Brie made with store-bought milk, okay? So 2.5 gallons of milk, 1/2 cup of extra cream or your heavy whipping cream, 1/4 teaspoon of MM100, which I have right here. You are also going to need 1/8 teaspoon of penicillium candidum, and that is right here. You are also going to need a 1/64 teaspoon of geotrichum candidum, which is right here. And then last, you are going to need 1/4 teaspoon of rennet. Now, when you are mixing your rennet, you want to mix your rennet in a 1/4 teaspoon of non-chlorinated water. In addition, if you are using store-bought milk, you are going to need calcium chloride. And for that, you will need a 1/4 teaspoon calcium chloride. And this is all based on a 2.5 gallon measurement. So if you are going to make more than 2.5 gallons, then you are going to have to do the math and figure out your measurements from there. But the measurements that I gave you is for 2.5 gallons of milk with an additional 1/2 cup of heavy cream. And I recommend buying or getting these little teaspoons. It comes in various sizes, all the way from a 1/64th all the way up to a 1/4 teaspoon. And so when you're dealing with these types of cultures, these here little spoons or measuring spoons are absolutely indispensable. So let me show you. So I have got my 10-gallon brewer's pot that I'm going to be using to make my Brie today. And then I also have another 5-gallon because I've got roughly 18 gallons of milk sitting on my counter. Now, normally when I am making cheese, I will skim off the cream because that cream goes towards making butter, cream cheese, other items that require a heavy cream count. But because I am making the Brie, I am not going to skim off my milk. I'm just going to use the full milk with the cream. And let me get that so that you can see. So this here is a gallon of milk, and as you can see, it's got this beautiful cream line. And if I were to measure it, it would be somewhere in the vicinity of a 1/2 cup, maybe a little bit more. So for this recipe, I'm not going to be using additional cream because I have a very beautiful cream line on my milk. So if you are using raw milk like I am going to be using, then the recipe that you are going to want to follow is 2 gallons of milk, 1/4 teaspoon of MM100, 1/32 teaspoon of penicillium candidum, a 1/28 teaspoon of geotrichum candidum, 1/4 teaspoon of rennet. So that is the recipe that I am going to follow for the most part. So because I've made this before, I am going to actually use the triple cream measurements for the cultures. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill up my pots with the milk. And like I said, I'm going to be using the 2 gallons, the 2 gallon recipe. And then I'm just going to add in just a little bit more culture than what this recipe is calling for. But if you want to go strictly by the recipe, I gave it to you. I just kind of know from experience that with the Brie, I need just a teeny bit more of the cultures. So here we go. Let me move my phone out of the way. So I'm going to pour in just a few of these gallons and I'm going to pause it or pause the video and bring you back when we get to the point of adding the cultures. Now, the other thing with this is for the triple cream, if you are using the store bought, you want to bring your milk up to 86. If you are using raw milk, you want to bring your temperature up to 90 degrees. So between 86 and 90 degrees is a perfect temperature before adding your cultures. So here we go. And with these pots, because they have the spouts, make sure that they're off or else you're going to have one big mess. All right, so that is 2 gallons so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring you back when I get these pots full. All right, friends. So my pots are full. I've got the burners on. Now I'm going to bring the milk and the cream up to 90 degrees. Let me bring you in so you can see. As you can see, we are very full. So this pot is a 10-gallon pot. And I pretty much filled it up to the brim. And this here is a 5-gallon pot. And again, it's very, very full. So as I said, I'm going to bring it up to 90 degrees and I'm going to look on my thermometers. But I also will double check with the thermal thermometer to make sure that my milk is at the right temperature. When the milk comes up to 90 degrees or 86 degrees if you are using the store-bought milk, then you're going to add your cultures. So once we get up to temperature, because it's going to take a little bit, I will bring you back. All right, see you in a minute. All right, so we are back. It has been 3 hours since we added the cultures. So now I've already got prepared the rennet. Now, as a reminder, you need a 1/4 teaspoon of rennet. It could be calf rennet, it could be veal rennet. I have personally have not used the vegan style rennet, but I've also heard that it's not been very good. So let me take these lids off. So I'm taking the lids off, and these pots are really, really full. And I'm just setting them in the sink because we're just going to have to put those lids right back on. So once you add the rennet, you're going to stir it for about 20-30 seconds, if that. And then you're going to put the lid back on. And then we are going to let the rennet work for 1 hour. So I'm going to do the little pot first. You just pour it in. And so what I did was I took a 1/4 cup of filtered water, added my rennet, and stirred it. And then now we're adding it to the pot. There is a lot of cream in this, which is good. I mean, that is what we wanted. We want to try and get up underneath, get all nice and incorporated. Oops, sorry, I forgot to turn you. So we want to just basically go in a circular motion, get down to the bottom, get that rennet incorporated very well. And I am standing on my stool, so I look a little bit taller. All right. So on this one here, I'm just going to transfer my spoon this down a little bit. And we've got our second one here. So I'm trying to be very careful because these pots are incredibly full. I normally don't fill them up this high because I don't have a lot of room to work, but I wanted to use up all of the milk that we had. So I filled it up really full. And as a reminder, I have 10 gallons in this pot and 5 gallons in the small one for a total of 15 gallons of milk. So in the comments, you got to let me know if you try this at home or at least try it if you like Brie. If you don't like Brie, then I guess it would be pointless to try it. I would very much be interested to know if you've tried it and send pictures because I like seeing pictures of what people do. There we go. There's that. So now we cover it. And the reason why we cover the pots is because we want to retain the temperature. Okay, set a timer to 60 minutes. All right, so that is going to sit for 60 minutes. And then we'll get on to our next phase of the Brie. From here on out, it's not going to be difficult. It's actually not difficult at all. But I'm going to have to take it kind of slow because when I decant the cheese or the curds out of the pot, there's a lot of curds in here, or there will be. And so I'm going to make sure that the sink is clear and sanitized because I'm just going to have to take it out like literally by measuring cups because this is just way, way, way too heavy for me to lift. Anyway, I will see you guys in an hour once the rennet has done its job. All right, we'll see you in 60 minutes. All right, so it has been 60 minutes since we put in the rennet and the curds are looking beautiful. So I'm going to bring you over and I'm going to show you how we test for a good curd break. All right, so I've got you on the smaller pot because it's the easiest to see. And all you do is you take your curd knife, you slip it in, and then you just very carefully lift it up. And see how it's broken there? That's exactly what you're looking for. It's a beautiful, clean break. And so for the small pot, I'm going to be using this here is a curd cutter. For the bigger pot, I'm going to use the curd knife because this one here will not fit in the 10-gallon one. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to slip it in like that and then just move it through. So on this side, it's a little bit difficult because I've got the spout there and I've also got the temperature probe there. Okay, so let's do it this way. So the thing with the round pot is it's kind of hard to cut the curds regardless of what you use because you're dealing with a round pot. And so it likes to move. So I just cut it the best I can and get it to a nice small diameter or pieces. And I just kind of do the best I can. But that's what I like about this particular tool is that I can get to the bottom of the pot. And I just kind of go in different directions because I know that my curd is moving. So like I said, you just do the best you can with what you have. And this is really full. And then I just kind of lift it up, make sure I don't have any really large pieces. And if I do, I just kind of poke them through. And that's all there is to that. Now with the bigger pot, which I will move it's going to be a little bit trickier because this is so full. I've washed my hands and everything, so they are very clean, but my hands are going to get into the curd because there's just no help for it. So here I'm hitting the bottom. So I'm just cut it in cubes as best I can. So when the pot is this full, it's just really hard to get it really nice and clean, cut curds because it's just so full and it wants to move, as you can hopefully see. And then once I go vertical, then I'm going to go horizontal. And just right near the top it doesn't look real pretty, but it is what it is. So the handle is literally cutting the curds a little bit. Now, with this, because I'm not using the same tool that I did with the round one, I'm just going to go in at an angle and try and cut those cubes down even more. And I kind of go at it at a couple different directions, especially when I've got a pot that it's this full. All right. So I know I'm gonna have some really larger pieces in the bottom, but I'm not too worried about that. And that is the nice thing about this particular cheese is that once the curds are cut, I'm going to let them rest for a few minutes. And then I'm just going to stir it around very, very gently. I'll show you. And you just do that for 10-20 minutes. And then we'll decant the cheese out of the pots. So I will see you back in 10 minutes. All right, so we are back, and I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes, and we're just going to stir the curds. And I won't keep you here for the full 10 minutes, but just to show you what we do. As you can see, there's a lot of whey coming up, and that is normal. And you just stir for like 2 or 3 minutes, let it rest, and then stir it again for another 2 to 3 minutes. And you do that for I don't know, 10-15 minutes. I've got my timer set for 10. It kind of depends on the curds and what they look like. And this here is all we're doing. Just very gently stirring because you don't want to shatter your curds. And this pot is so full. And I've got my last load of jars in the dishwasher. So that will be nice to have that done. And if you see a large curd, you can just break it with your knife, or I'm using a Sportle. And so you can just break it on the edge. But if you use a very long knife to do this, that is totally fine too. Or if you have a curd knife, you could do it with the curd knife. And all this is doing is releasing the whey. Alrighty. So I'm going to let that one rest for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to continue on with the larger pot, and then I'll bring you back when we're done. Hi, so I am back. It has been about 15 minutes since I started stirring the curds, and as you can see, they have released a lot of whey. And it's not as apparent in the smaller pot because there's just so much in it, but in this bigger pot, you can see how much whey was released. And that is exactly what you were looking for. So now we've come to kind of the easy part and the hard part all at the same time. Now I have to get all of this into my strainer lined with cheesecloth. And so that is what I'm going to do. And there is just no way I can lift this. So I've got a clean measuring cup, and I'm just going to scoop out the curds and the whey and put it in the strainer. And then once everything is out of the pots, I'm going to let it drain for about 5-10 minutes. So I'll do a couple scoops, and then I will put you on hold until I get it all done. And if your curds are not small, that is not a big issue. And I will show you why. Because once this all gets into a mold, it's not going to matter. So, and this is basically all I'm going to do until the pots are empty. So I will bring you back when the pots are empty and we're ready to fill our molds. All right, so I've already got the big pot already decanted, and it's draining in the sink in a strainer lined with cheesecloth. So what I've got here is I've already started filling some of the molds, and I'll show you what I do. So these here plastic mesh things, I got them off of Amazon. I believe it was a package of 20 or something like that. So what I do is I put it inside of my ring mold, no bottom, and I just put it in like that. And then on the other side, just like that. And then I take my measuring cup and I fill it up with curd, drain out what you can, and then plop it in. So the reason why I put the mesh plastic in there is to keep it from spilling over. Because as this sits, as the curds sit, they will compress. So this here allows you to overfill the ring molds without creating a huge mess. And it will give you a nice, thick amount of cheese. And the weight of the curds will push the mesh to the side. Drain this out a little bit. I'm going to put some more in here. So what I do to drain the cheese is I put it on a very large cookie sheet, and then in the underneath this is 2-wire cookie coolers. And then I put more of the mesh on top of that so that when I go to flip it, all I have to do is pick up that plastic and flip it over. And I'll show you how we do that when the time comes. So this might look like a lot, but over the next several hours, those curds will compress and it fit into the ring mold really well. Now I have got a lot of curd, and so I also use these here, these little molds. These create really good, about 1 to 1.5 pound blocks of cheese once it's all done. But all I do is and they've got the bottom on there, so I don't have to worry about the curds falling through. And I'm going to have to get another pan because I am out of space on that one. So what I'll do is I will continue filling up these molds until all of my curds are done. So I've got a few more of these, but the other thing that you could use are these little molds. And these are really cute. These here will also give you about a pound of cheese once it's all settled. And it creates a really cool design on the bottom. So you can use those as well. And I got all of these molds off of cheesemaker.com or New England Cheese Company. And yeah, so that's all we're going to finish doing. So I'm going to finish filling these, and then I'm going to let them set for 2 hours. And then I'm going to flip it and then wait 2 hours, flip it again. So basically these have to be flipped every 2 hours for 12 hours. Now, obviously, I'm not going to stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning. So I will give it a good flip or another flip before I go to bed tonight, and then I will let it rest overnight. But in the meantime, I'm going to finish filling up all of the molds, decant the small pot of curds and get those in a mold. And then I'll bring it back and I'll let you see. All right, we'll see you in a bit. All right, so I have all of the pots emptied of the curds, and I ended up with a lot of cheese. So let me show you. On this tray, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then on this one, I've got 4 plus the 2 big ones. Look at the level that this has already gone down. Now, one of the reasons why I keep the trays here by the sink is because when they get full of whey, because it's draining, I have easy access to drain it, and it doesn't make as much of a mess as it could. So when you go to flip it, and so in 2 hours, it's now 4:38. So at 6:30ish, I'm going to come back and I'm going to flip the cheese. And all you do is you take a smaller mesh. And so let's just take this one for example. You put it over top, and then I got these little cutting boards off of Amazon. You put it on top and you flip it like that. And then you put it back on your tray. You will do this every 2 hours for 12 hours. Or for me, once I go to bed, I'll give it one more flip. But I will continue doing that for the next several hours. And then I will let it, once I give it the last flip at night, then I'll just let it sit until morning. And then in the morning, I will flip it again. When we get to that point, I will show you what we do then. All right, so until tomorrow morning, I will see you later. Bye. Well, good morning, friends. It is 9:30 in the morning, and the first thing that I did this morning when I got up was I flipped our cheese. So I'm just going to move the camera around so that you can see what we have. We have all of that beautiful cheese. So as you can see, it is still in the molds, and I left it in the molds so that you can see what we're going to do next. I'm going to bring my camera a little bit closer here. So right here on the counter, I have got a clean towel, and then I've got the cookie sheet or the cookie cooling rack lined with this plastic mesh. And then I also have an 8x12 pan. And so what we're going to do now is I'm going to put cheese salt in the pan. Now we are going to basically roll our cheese in the salt. And there is a formula for gauging how much salt you need. But that is if you want to get really scientific, and it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start unmolding the cheese. I'm going to roll it in the salt, and then we're going to put it on the racks and leave it for 12 hours. So I'm going to take our big wheel right here. I'm going to show you. I'm just taking the round off and the extra. So this here ended up being a very large chunk of cheese. And so what I'm going to do later on, actually what I'm going to do right now, so I am going to cut this cheese in half because this here is a really big round of cheese and I don't want it that thick. Mostly because when you are curing your brie, you're going to want that fuzzy texture to it, and it will help develop the flavors if it's not so thick. And this here did not, I mean, it compacted very well, but not as much as I thought it would. So we ended up with a very large rounded cheese. So I'm just going to cut it in half, and it's still really soft. And so out of that one, now we've got 2 rounds. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sit it right here in the salt. Let me show you. I'm just going to put it in the salt, flip it. And all you're looking for really is nice coverage, a nice thick layer of salt on your cheese. Now, what this is going to do is going to serve several different purposes. The first purpose is it's going to add flavor to your cheese. Second is it is going to allow the whey to drain off even more. And 3, it's going to act like a preservative. So we're just going to make sure it's all nice and coated all the way around, just like so. And then we're going to set it on a rack right here. And so that will stay there for 12 hours. So until tonight. Then once it drains for 12 hours, then we're going to put it into a drying box. And then I am going to put it in my refrigerator or my cheese fridge. It's not exactly a refrigerator. So I have one of those refrigerators that you can adjust the temperature. So I'm going to put it in my cheese fridge, which is at 45 degrees. The ideal temperature is 55 degrees, but I don't have that capability. So it takes a little bit longer for the fuzzy rind to develop, but it will develop in a 45-degree cheese fridge temperature. Okay. Now, for your salt, I am using a very fine-grained cheese salt. You don't have to use a cheese salt, but it is recommended. You can also use the pink Himalayan salt, fine grain. Okay, so this here is our second round of cheese. Again, I'm going to cut this in half, stick it in there. All right, and I've got another cooling rack. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do when you don't have enough cooling racks, because I don't. I'm going to set that on there. So when you're using the cooling racks, one of the things that I have found, and that's why I put the plastic on it, is that a rust will develop on the cooling racks. And I don't want that rust on my cheese. So that is another reason why I use the plastic mesh. So again, I'm just making sure that the top is nicely covered with a layer of salt and the back side. And I'm just making sure that the edges have got that nice layer of salt as well, because you want the entire cheese to be coated in salt. And you just double checking, and that is good. Set it on my rack. I apologize about the noise. That was my vacuum, which I affectionately called Rosie. And anybody that grew up in the 70s and 80s know who Rosie was. She was from the Jetsons. All right. So here's another round that is coated. And all I do is in between, I just kind of break up that salt. And let me move this stuff out of the way. So when you don't have enough cookie sheets or cooking cooling racks, as I don't, you can use these bamboo mats. They're made for sushi. And all you do is you just lay it down on your towel, like so. And I take a plastic mat and I just place it on top. And then this here is just a little piece. So next, I'll take my next round. But look how beautiful that is. Now, these here are great for individuals that just want a small amount of cheese. So with these big rounds that I did, what I'm going to do with those is I'm going to slice them when they're ready and sell them by, I don't know, quarter, half pound pieces. But for those that really like, all right, sorry about that, guys. I had to put in a new battery and another memory card. So I need to put a little bit more salt in here. I'm just going to break up the bigger chunks and we're going to continue on. Now the cheese is going to be damp, which is good because it's going to allow that salt to stick. So I'm going to bring it over here. I'm just going to finish coating the cheese with salt. So as I was saying, for the salt, you can use a cheese salt or you could use a pink Himalayan salt or a sea salt, just whatever you have. The only caution that I would say is do not use the iodized salt. It just does not work well. Once I am done coating these, I will get my scale and weigh them and see what it weighs. And then that will give me a kind of a good idea what to expect once it is fully cured. All right, I will bring you back as soon as I get all of the cheese rounds coated in salt. All right, see you back in a minute. All right, so all of the cheese is now salted and it is going to rest or drain for the next 12 hours. So around 10 o'clock tonight, I will put all of this cheese in drying boxes. And this here is what I use. I got this from Commercial Kitchen in Beaumont. It's got a stainless steel insert that I lay on the bottom. That way, as the cheese continues to drain, it won't come into contact with all of that moisture. The other thing that you could do is if you are using a container similar to this, is you could put paper towel in the bottom, put the insert. Let me show you. So this here's the insert. So you put the paper towel down, then your insert, and then I take the mesh and I put that down as well. And then the cheese will go into the drying box. Then you will put it in your refrigerator for 2 weeks. During that 2 weeks, you are going to flip it every day. So once you flip it every day after 2 weeks, then you can wrap it in what's called cheese paper. And this cheese paper is very specialized as it has microscopic holes that will still allow airflow because in order for the brie to get that fuzzy texture, it still has to be exposed to air or air circulation. And so let me grab that real quick. Let me show you. All right, so this here is the cheese storage paper. I got this off of Amazon. I bought several packages because you only get like 10 sheets in this. And this here is what it looks like. So once you fold it, it looks like this. So for these big rounds, I'm going to have to double wrap it and that'll be fine. So, but that is what you are going to wrap your cheese in after 2 weeks, maybe 2.5, depending on how well your cheese is doing. The important part here is once you get this into the fridge, just flip it every day for 2 weeks. It will allow more weight to escape and it will allow for the fuzzy wine to develop. And that is what those cultures that we used were for, the geotrichum candidum and the penicillium candidum. That is what that is going to help promote. The yeast that we used and the MM100 is mostly for flavor. So as I said, we're going to weigh a couple of these. That way you can get an idea. So on my scale, I've got a piece of paper towel. And so this wheel right here weighs 1 pound and 7 ounces. And then this one here weighs 1 pound and 12.5 ounces. And then these little ones weigh 13 ounces and an eighth. So they'll vary in weight, of course, because not this one here weighs 11 pounds and 5/8 ounces. And then the little baby one, this one here, zero that out, that weighs 6 1/4 ounces. So once it fully drains and dries out, it will get a little bit lighter. So that is what we're looking at. So when we get closer to putting it into the cheesecloth, I will bring you back and give you an update on how we're looking. So sorry, I've got salt all over my hands. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you give this recipe a try. I will have the ingredients and everything that I used in the descriptions. So again, thank you for joining me, and please like, share, and subscribe so that I can bring you more content and get to know you. Thank you, and have a blessed day.